here is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He went on Bloomberg yesterday, I guess prior to this morning, obviously, where the stock market just fell off a cliff. You see what the stock market looks like, and it's just a vertical line down. Is this good? I don't necessarily think so. But it's just so striking to me how, okay, this is at 5:32 p.m. Trump strategically did his press conference after the markets closed at 4. The press conference was supposed to be at 3. They changed it to 4:01 or 4:05 because, hey, we don't want to have this complete crash get in the way of our PR victory today. Or
of one nice day of the markets before we crash it down.
One nice day as a treat. And then everybody's going to have some temporary pain, according to Donald Trump. But like, we're still parsing out how much of this is Trump's just own whims and how much of this is being coordinated with the rest of the cabinet members. But here is Bessent seemingly knowing nothing about the policy that his administration is implementing.
Plans for conversations or a trip to Beijing?
Nothing imminent.
When it comes to this negotiation, April 9th, these tariffs come in place. Do you plan on having negotiations before that date?
Again, I'm not part of the negotiations, so we'll see. I am sure that there are going to be a lot of calls. I just don't know if there are going to be negotiations.
The president had this huge chart showing all of the different rates. Canada and Mexico notably missing on that chart. Why is that?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay, I imagine that has to do potentially because they're already in negotiations previously with the 25%. Plans for...
So, nothing. He's got nothing. The Secretary of the Treasury, just going to responsibilities of Treasury Secretary here, responsible for formulating and recommending domestic and international financial, economic, and tax policy participation in the formulation of broad fiscal policies that have general significance for the economy and managing the public debt. This is from the government website outlining the duties of the Treasury Secretary. But from what I've seen so far, Bessent's entire role is to allow Elon Musk to ransack the Treasury Department, which he's supposed to be the head of. He just gives the okay and says, if you want to tinker around in here illegally, go ahead. And to get rich, much like Howard Lutnick, on that point, let's just do this and we'll respond to it more broadly. Here's Howard Lutnick also yesterday. He went on TV and was asked here on CBS News about the effects of the tariffs. This is this clown car that the Trump administration has compiled.
America will be the most extraordinary, the most powerful place, and Americans are behind Donald Trump. That's why they elected him.
Mr. Secretary, economists clearly are not at the moment. They think this is going to be trouble. Many investors also seem to think it's going to be trouble. We saw the markets crash overnight in the futures market. If the market here in the U.S. opens at 9 a.m. and things head south, is there a red line for you pulling back and saying, okay, hold on, we're going to rethink things?
No, come on. The markets, when Donald Trump was the president last time, he put on tariffs. And if you go back and look at that news, everybody said, oh my gosh. And the stock market, as you heard him say yesterday, up 88% during his presidency. So what you've got to realize is, sure, there's going to be some short-term movement, but this is a reordering of global trade. It's time for America to manufacture again. And I think these changes in the stock market, while they're initial, long-term, you've got to assume, and medium-term, and employment-based, you're going to see America thrive. Interest rates are going to come down, as we said, and America is going to thrive. And that's what Donald Trump is about. He's about employing Americans, building in America, and having Americans be the winners.
Hey,
I am not going to place a bet that interest rates are going to go down if these continue to take effect, because they will have an inflationary effect. They are going to inflate prices because the United States is essentially isolating itself from the rest of the world and the traditional global trade order that has been basically in place since post-World War II and started under FDR in response to repealing the broad tariffs that helped put us into a Great Depression. It's so annoying to hear them talk about how this is going to help domestic manufacturing. Guys, in theory, okay, tariffs, even if they're broad, but I would do tailored tariffs. They can incentivize onshore manufacturing by making an imported good more expensive, so people are more likely to purchase the good that is manufactured here in the United States. But you know what you need to do first? You need to be able to manufacture the goods in the United States. So prior to any tariff policy, you would have to do billions and billions of dollars in very specific levels of investing in this economy to make these goods here. All this does is raise prices for goods people already need.
I mean, I think it's impossible to take like Howard Lutnick seriously when he defends these tariffs, because he's just like the secretary of glazing at this point. Like, now that Vivek is gone, he's just like the lead glazer in the cabinet. Like, and he's good at it. Like, no one defends Trump like Howard Lutnick defends Trump.
But can I defend Lutnick for a second? It's because he's getting rich maybe more than any of the, like, he's glazing, but it's not like he's not getting glazed himself. So
of
this
course,
is,
I think he's like a lot of people
taking care of him. He has all these investments in crypto and in commercial space. So that's why he loves this stuff.
Yeah, no, and I think the people who are able to do what Howard Lutnick is doing, which is to voraciously defend Trump in a way that makes him seem like very loyal and just like full-throatedly have no shame, are going to be very successful in the Trump administration up until they become the face of some failure that results in them getting like kicked out for being losers. But, I think just the haphazard way these tariffs have been implemented, many rumors going around that they might have just been using AI to generate the rates, that they have no idea what they were doing, seems obvious. To your point, Emma, that like not only are they putting tariffs on industries that America might have some domestically in their nascency, they're putting tariffs on things that America just simply can't and doesn't produce. Like, they're putting tariffs on Madagascar vanilla, they're putting tariffs on aluminum from Canada, just things that America does not have the capacity to produce any of or any more of. And it's being done, I think.
Do we like coffee? I mean, we can't do that here.
No, Americans notoriously hate coffee. No, that's fine. Americans notoriously hate coffee. But I think, for Trump, I can't say for the people around Trump, I think the benefits are obvious. This allows him in his last term as president and the senescence of his life to play king. That this means that every head of every business, of every industry, of every, conglomerate that controls an industry, of every special interest, heads of state now have to come and prostrate themselves before Trump and ask for him to alleviate their suffering. And that's going to make him feel like a very big man. It's going to make him feel very important. And that's all it would take at the most like superficial level for him to be involved in this. And the fact that domestically, a lot of those industries are going to grease the wheels with money means that like Republicans are going to see their coffers filled, at least in terms of like Trump-based super PACs. And, it's going to increase his power within the Republican Party. That doesn't mean that they're not being executed in an incredibly clumsy way that will likely lead to incredible immiseration for, Americans at home, certainly, but just globally speaking. And it also doesn't mean that his plan won't like fail and that countries will, by nature of what their domestic political demands require from them, carve another path. They might just be unable to prostrate themselves enough for Trump, or they might be unwilling to, and they might just let the tariffs continue and make deals with China, make deals amongst themselves, just exclude America from those deals. So it's, even if there is some kind of plan from people surrounding Trump, like you have billionaires who might think they can weather the storm and then consolidate control over various manufacturing industries at home, it doesn't mean that they won't fail, because a lot of our billionaires are very stupid now.
Yeah.
And so they might just destroy America.
Right. And also to your point, this actually incentivizes other countries to look elsewhere and say to China for their cheaper electric vehicles that have better charging capacity, as I just discussed with Paris Marx. This is the kind of thing where, given the broadness of the tariffs, it gives more of a permission structure for, say, the EU, which was also hit with this 10% tariff, to take their money and go elsewhere, because they don't have to worry about the Americans retaliating against them in another way, because it's basically everybody else is in the same boat. It's everybody else against the United States. So why wouldn't they basically create new trade relationships immediately with the rest of the world, and China in particular? China hawks are going to be pissed about this, and I think they are in the Senate.
It's already happening. I mean, I was reading about how China, Japan, and South Korea have made a pact, and the EU is in talks with China. it is everybody versus the U.S., which is, I'm sure some MAGA people think that's a good thing. It means that, they all fear Donald Trump or something like that. But it's I think they'll learn very quickly. Like, there's going to be people, we've already seen, like, with the cuts to the federal government, MAGA people coming out and going like, I didn't know they meant my job. And then you see, MAGA people having family members deported, and it's, I didn't know they meant my family members. I think that'll happen with this too. Now, whether they, actually act upon it next time around remains to be seen, but that's definitely what's going to happen. You guys were mentioning specific tariffs before, and for me, my favorite is, you've probably seen it, it went like viral last night, the tariff on the Heard and McDonald Islands. Have you seen this one? So I had never heard of these islands before, and I'm sure you guys might not be familiar either. And I looked them up, and they're actually considered part of Australia, even though they're apparently 3 or 4 days away by boat. And they're a remote island, very cold. And the only thing that lives there is penguins, apparently. There are no people who live there yet on Trump's tariff sheet.
So they have a tuxedo industry, you're saying?
They have
Said it too good for too long.
So on Trump's sheet, it said that they tariff the U.S. 10%. So in retaliation, we're tariffing the Heard and McDonald Islands 10%.
Your feet are not going to be so happy now.
They're going to come waddling in, asking for a deal.
The 10% is just like a minimum by nature of how they calculated, or how the language learning model calculated the easiest way to implement tariffs. Like, the 10% is just the minimum. Like, every place that doesn't have a trade deficit with us that is, exceeds 10%, has just given a 10%. There are plenty of countries on there that we just don't have any meaningful trade with. So it really was just done so slapdash, and just not very well thought out.
And this is just indicative of the idea of the fact that Donald Trump has captured the entire Republican Party, and also the administration and the apparatus that would rein him in any way, because this is obviously his impulse. He has a humiliation ritual thing where he loves the idea, back to Mitt Romney, right? When Mitt Romney was critical of him, that in the entire presidential campaign in 2016, and then he wins, and what do you know? You get Reek sitting next to him, Mitt Romney, because he floated that he would maybe pick him for Secretary of State, and he didn't end up doing it. But you know why he even took that meeting? Because he wanted to humiliate him. What did they just do with Zelensky? Humiliating him in front of everybody else, because Trump thinks he can get some better deal out of him. And now he's trying to do this to the broader world, because it's all about everybody coming back to him and treating him with respect. And he is transforming the global economy based on his own narcissistic whims, and has staffed the administration with people, and has beaten the Republican Party into submission. In a way that everybody's okay. I mean, we have some pushback in the Senate now. You had 4 Republicans join this resolution that Tim Kaine put forward. It passed because I think it's a resolution. You don't necessarily need John Thune's approval as majority leader, but we're still kind of trying to figure out how that was able to get through. And maybe it's because it's a resolution and not a bill. But the reason that Paul and McConnell joined onto this is because, say, for example, this was specifically about the Canadian tariffs. In Kentucky, the bourbon industry is $9 billion, and Kentucky creates 95% of the world's bourbon. And Canada is a major trading partner there, and you see how they are banning U.S. alcohol in different stores, and there's this renewed sense of Canadian nationalism that is benefiting the Liberals for some, which is incredible. Not for some reason, it's obvious why, but you don't usually see it on that side. And so that's what we are bending the world's global trade markets because of the narcissism of a very addled, insane sociopath.
What we're doing is what on Twitch they call a rage quit.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. Rage quitting the world.
And our boy Steve Mnuchin on. Remember yesteryear when we had a Patriots in charge like Steve Mnuchin?
I mean, I remember talking about this guy. This was the robo signing subprime mortgage scammer that Kamala Harris got let off as Attorney General with kind of a very a loose, lax fine. This was also the time period, but like this was considered a very corrupt looking pick because of the level of, I guess, the malfeasance that he participated in during the subprime mortgage crisis, and now he's the reasonable one apparently.
Former Treasury Secretary, here he is.
I think it's the larger tariffs that are called the reciprocal tariffs. I'm hopeful that those will be negotiated down, that those are tariffs that will bring people to the table and we'll negotiate them down. Now, for many businesses, it takes a while to move the manufacturing base. Apple's announced big investments in the U.S. That's going to take a while. I hope the president will consider giving people credits for those people who actually have made real commitments, not just announcements, but real commitments to build in the U.S., because there's a transition period here that needs to be adjusted to.
Yeah, putting that very diplomatically, to be kind.
I remember when Steve Jobs had a meeting with Barack Obama over a decade ago, where he famously told, I think this came out in the Walter Isaacson biography, Jobs told Barack Obama, those jobs, manufacturing jobs, he means, are never coming back. And Obama's like, all right, I guess you're right. Steve Jobs, what are you going to do? And the truth is, they're not coming back this way. With this tariffs. This is not the way to do it. The way to do it, again, like I keep saying, is state involvement in the economy to direct us toward priorities that need to be done. Look at what China's done in just high-speed rail since 2008. That isn't done by just the magic of the invisible hand of the free markets. China decided we need to be good in trains. We need to be good in batteries for this next century. Consciously, as a government, they decided we have abandoned that capacity. We turned over NASA to a psychotic Afrikaner.
And we're doing more of it.
Exactly. We just keep doing it. And this abundance thing is still looking towards these capitalists that have fucked us. That nobody on this call right now has experienced a dynamically growing capitalism that improves the lives generation over generation. Even our parents barely, to the extent that they were like graduating in the 70s, didn't really experience it much either. They failed. It's a failure. And it is not because of fucking regulations. It's because of how these people, these lords of creation, lords of capital, have decided to allot and invest. And when it comes to like something like Detroit, we let them decide, hey, those unions have too much power. We need to start shipping factories to states that are easier to union bust in. That made it a less productive industry, and now it's fucked. And so, like, look, I don't agree with Sean Fain's thing about the tariffs, but he's right that we have let these capitalists just decide all these policies for too long, and it's put us in this horrible position. We're on the precipice of it now, and it's going to be worse. Like I say, we haven't experienced the benefits of dynamic capitalism. Because it hasn't existed for decades and decades. We're going to experience something worse now.
Yeah, and frankly, the Biden administration didn't do enough. We did increase domestic manufacturing jobs under Biden. That was a bright spot of his administration, in part because we lost so many during COVID under Trump, but there was still a decrease prior to that point.
And the solution we took was to encourage investors,
right?
Not to directly invest.
Because chips did. It can create like outcomes like what we're describing. But what Matt is saying is that it's fleeting, right? Because you can get another administration in and those corporations still get the subsidies and they may have hired some folks, but without centralized state policy that doesn't place our economy so much in the hands of folks that are trying to extract everything for their own profit, you can't sustain this. You can't sustain it. There needs to be a return to a strong, centralized planning for our society, for our economy, and more state intervention.
And it's weird that we have this conversation and don't look at the actual model that's working. We try to look back to some sort of theoretical capitalism that can sort it out. The reason that we're not solving climate change is because we're leaving it to investors who care, like Emma said, about profit. And if all of a sudden, say, solar panels start being really cheap and making energy cheap, guess what? There's no profit in that industry. And so investors get less less concerned with it. It's not that they're not in it to save the fucking world. They're in it to put money in their pockets.
Yep. Straight up. All right, guys.
Just to add to the last time Apple committed to moving manufacturing to the U.S., I believe it was Trump's first term. What they did was they manufactured their most expensive computer, the Mac Pro, which is like the $7,000 like pro like model for like, you know, movie studios and big like editing, video production companies. So it's not like they moved like their major manufacturing here. They moved like a very slim, probably the slimmest part of its, company, of its profit to the U.S. So it's whatever they're building to move here. It's going to be another thing like that. They're not going to start manufacturing iPhones here. I guarantee you that.
It'll be Foxconn, or right? Like another PR. We're onshoring these jobs.
Right. Well, that's a good point, because it's not because they want to bring back the union jobs of like, say, Detroit mid-century.
No.
It's because they want us to be like Foxconn workers, and they are setting the conditions so that future generations don't have a fucking choice.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Brandon.
I'm just agreeing. Yeah, absolutely. This is an all-out assault on the middle class, and it's been a long time coming in the sense that since FDR, since the widespread social safety net was developed in this country post Great Depression, capitalists have been trying to erode it because it provides workers with too many options. It provides them with too much freedom, and it's an anomaly of what their system wants. And the Democrat and Republican Party, at least to some degree, both agree that, workers simply have too much freedom. They have too much freedom and they have too much opportunity. And if the stock market has to take a little bit of a crunch to ensure that like the average American has less options, then I'm sure plenty of companies are willing to take some of that deal, at least in the short term.
Well, honestly, because at the end of the day, what Trump is saying is that this is a way to not raise your taxes. Not that the Republicans would do it, but they're also trying to gut Medicaid, the program that keeps half of the 72 million adults that are on it are well below the poverty line, and it provides them with basic health care. They're in their next budget. That's their outline, is that they basically want to destroy the program. And so when they have to go to the parliamentarian and say, and they may not even do this, but like this is more traditional Republican thought. Well, how are you going to get the revenue, to justify some of these other things that you're trying to do? They're going to go with Medicaid cuts and then say that these tariffs are raising this amount of revenue because it's a compounding sales tax on the poorest Americans in this country. And if people don't remember the Foxconn thing, Trump had made this big promise in his first term of a, quote, manufacturing miracle, where in Wisconsin there were supposed to be these plans that Foxconn was going to develop a manufacturing facility there, and they ended up never doing so. And then they were going to ship or provide that area with 13,000 new jobs, and he just never did it. But they did take a bunch of investment money for it. So that's his vision of domestic manufacturing.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.